Whoa, I think I'm recording. Yep. Cold today. Yeah, I'm running late. And, yeah, that's just the way it is. Intelligence. Yeah, maybe I'll make this an Efil video because it's kind of a follow-up to the intelligence argument. And, somebody left a comment, of course, all these comments, implying that somehow a super intelligence wouldn't understand sentience. It wouldn't have a subjective sentience, and therefore, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, yeah, but then doesn't that, just as my video pointed out, I mean, the whole video was about the subject that the word intelligence doesn't mean too much. Because intelligence that are ill-informed, they can have catastrophic ignorance. And intelligence can be catastrophically broken by bits of ignorance. If they're ignorant of the most important thing, it's like if they know all the rules to Monopoly, but they don't know, that $500 bills are more valuable than $100 bills, or some other stupid thing like that. They can't play the game rationally. They're completely useless as an intelligence. There's no point in calling it intelligence anymore. So, and especially not super intelligence. So if they don't understand, if an intelligence doesn't understand that, if it would not understand us as biological organisms that are manifesting consciousness and suffering, there's no conversation. It can't be super intelligent. It just can't be. It can be, maybe well informed, but even those words get tricky. And so, we really should have a word for a volume, something of large size that is fundamentally dysfunctional, useless. A big book with no words in it. Something. Yeah, because this is a problem. It's a really big problem. To imply that something has a stature as a functioning device, and yet it is not functioning in the most primary of the categories by definition of its function. Like, a super intelligence really has to have the basic stuff right. If it's got the foundation wrong, it might as well all be wrong. That's the simple truth of it, right? If you got the basic value constituents wrong, it doesn't matter what you have right. It's all irrelevant. It all just ends up being energy. It's like a car without wheels. It can be the greatest car, the biggest engine, the shiniest paint, the greatest dashboard ever. It gives massages. But it's not a car if it doesn't have wheels. It's just kind of irritating that that's exactly the point I'm making in the video, and people still comment like they didn't even watch the video. Like they're just going to pretend that isn't the subject. Just really irritating. So anyway, getting to the point of it though, getting to the Efilist angle in this, the life is kind of futile angle. What would be the minimum requirements of an intelligence? The minimum acknowledged truth. And we're still apparently arguing about that. And arguing in this stupid way. Ways that you keep saying, well, let's not do it this way. Let's not argue about our subjective taste. Let's argue about the qualitative state of our existence. Let's not argue about what frustrates us or what irritates us or what pleases us or what dissatisfies us. Because yes, that's subjective. What's not subjective is the fact that there are things that please us, that we live being in a state of being pleased or displeased, suffering or enjoying. And let's understand that for what it is, which is just psychology. It's like when you're discussing vegetarianism. it it really has to be discussed in the context that we are flexible in terms of our biological need, that you don't have to be raised, conditioned to be a meat eater, that you have a choice, and that choice is sort of important, because once your body habituates to a diet, it does take effort to rehabituate it, to convert it to a new lifestyle. This is the truth. But that's the conversation to be having, is what would be better to instill. If you're going to make a human being, would you make it a meat-dependent human being? Would you really? When you know that, if I can give you statistical facts demonstrating that they'll live longer, they'll likely live healthier, and that there'll be a huge savings economically if they're vegetarian, would you still say, no, I'm going to make them a meat eater? No. Would there be a logic to that? No, that's the argument to be having. We're not saying the argument, no one's making the argument you have to do something. The argument is, what do you support? What do you support human beings being? What do you support them becoming? Damn. So, we can never get on. I mean, you can't even have an argument if you can't argue the same elements of the argument. And the subjective, objective crap gets so irritating. Because the known truth is the existence of the consciousness. The known truth is the states that it exists in, and that those states, we know from personal experience and observed experience, I don't know what that beat was, observed experience, that these states are mutable, that you go from one to another, that we all migrate from better to lesser states throughout our lives. We can agree on that. It doesn't matter what causes the states. That's sort of, it's not irrelevant because it has to do with all these other ethical conditions in our environment, but it's irrelevant to this conversation about what does it mean to be a feeling organism, in terms of what's the value weight of that. What's the value weight of the difference between me being miserable in terms of what I feel and sense, and me being comfortable in terms of what I feel and sense. And those two states exist. There's no subjective, objective argument to be had here. No human being exists in some perpetual euphoric state, nor does any human being exist in a perpetually miserable state. They all migrate between states, and that migration has, I think, it should be established as a premise, a absolute fact, that those states have qualitative difference, that one is better than another. As a state, in and of itself, it's an improvement in condition. Oh, man. But no, let's not do that. Let's just keep arguing about whether ham sandwiches are better than peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I mean, it's just goddamn so irritating. So anyway, back to the intelligence thing. I think I'll switch hands. I don't know, this camera picks up noise. Maybe it's the gloves. I don't know, it's usually this jacket. Or maybe it's the other jacket. No, this jacket makes noise for some reason. There's a thumping sound. I don't know where that comes from. It was in a couple of videos. This doesn't have sleeves. That shouldn't be the problem. I mean, it doesn't have, flapping style sleeves. Anyway, it's cold. I should have wore the other jacket, actually. Yeah. So where was I? Oh, intelligence, yeah. So, yeah, what's this? The basic knowledge base. That any intelligence, anything we're going to call a super intelligence or any kind of intelligence or anything like smart, what does it have to know to be potentially smart, potentially wise? Maybe that's the right word to use, was wise. wise does imply correctness. And that's the important word here, is what is the most correct, or what is the biggest correct intelligence? What would the ultimate big correct intelligence think? Or even the 98% complete intelligence think, whatever the number you want to get. But what would be the minimum knowledge base? You have evolution, replicating DNA molecule, toolkit, intelligence, or reasoning capacity, one of the tools, desire mechanism, carrot whip, to motivate the organism to use its tools to accomplish the task of maintaining the body and procreating a new being into the future, to satisfy the design specifications of a replicating molecule. And the motivation function comes with this noise feature, this aberrant, this side effect of creating a qualitative sense state of being that can be decidedly good or bad, comfortable or uncomfortable, more specifically. More that in and of itself as a thing. What else in the universe? What other property manifests by a entity, a collection of matter? What other manifestation of a collection of matter has more significance than a conscious state? Can we find something? Is there any other matter in the universe doing something more important, more significant, more meaningful, more relevant, more value-rich than a sentient consciousness experiencing conscious states of welfare? Can we find anything? I would argue that no superintelligence could find anything. No human intelligence, no any kind of intelligence could miss the truth that this is the significant manifestation, that this is the only manifestation that matters. The rest of the matter can just matter. It doesn't matter. But when this matter matters, it matters. Yeah, that really does make sense. I know it doesn't sound like it makes sense, but it makes sense. And that's the minimum. You really got to know that. You got to know that consciousness is the value game. That's the currency of this game. That's what we're playing for. That's the value, and it's the only value. But unfortunately, there's no reason to create the value. There's no reason to commoditize this thing and force the exchange of it, to force there to be a price paid for it. So if you can't do it for free, if you can't do it at a profit, there's no reason to do it. You don't play a game unless it satisfies a need condition. Nobody plays a game for no reason, because they don't need to be entertained, or they don't need... No, it just doesn't happen. There's no point in putting it at risk for no function, for no profit, for no benefit. And there is no sentience in the universe that needs us to exist. No pre-existing feature or function that requires the payment to be incurred to produce the gameplay. There's no demand to, there's nothing to be accomplished. Because the value is intrinsically, fundamentally, I guess this is another intelligent argument. Ice here. Careful. Okay. Made it. Oh. What are we doing? Oh, hey. What was I? Yeah. Yeah. So there's no outlying consumer of the product. So all we have is this value exchange within this closed system, and the value is essentially now we're getting to the more complex argument of placing value, where again I'm going to argue that the negative states have intrinsically more value weight than the positive states. The positive states are more of a manifestation of the satisfaction of a negative state, the resolution of a negative state, the migration from a negative state to a less negative state. We don't migrate from positive to positive. We know the existence of the negative. The one that's sort of mushy and illusionary is exactly how do we manifest a satisfaction, a comfort state. And that comfort usually requires there to be a pre-existing negative for which the positive is derived through conversion of the negative. So in net, the game in and of itself just can't produce anything. It can't produce a comfort state that isn't dependent on a pre-existing negative state. So it's a zero-sum game, even when played very well. And the way we're playing it, it's, in my opinion, a decidedly negative sum game. And the fact that there's nobody else consuming the negative game in some positive way, that we're not converting anything else besides ourselves into a more positive conscious state, dooms the equation, makes the logical math impossible to navigate to some result that produces a yes, go ahead, play the game. The price is too high, the risk is too significant. How else to place that? There isn't sufficient product producing potential. The machine is essentially attempting to produce what it's consuming. And so for it to succeed, it would have to essentially become a perpetual energy machine. It would essentially have to produce energy out of nothing, this positive out of a non-negative. It would break the law of value physics. It just won't work. Can't happen. Anyway, enough of the video and such. People. Yuck. Anyway, until next time. And such. I did hit the button.